to order. Surprises. Let's begin the meeting Monday, July 12th, 2021, Historic Preservation Commission. Item number 2, we'll go to that immediately. Approval of the agenda. Any changes, corrections, amendments that need to be made to the agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 3, approval of the June 14th, 2021 minutes. Everybody have a chance to look at that? Are there any corrections, changes, amendments, deletions, clarifications that need to be made? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 4, public forum. This time is set aside for public comments on topics of concern to the Historic Preservation Commission other than those on this agenda. The chairperson may limit each speaker to 5 minutes. Please understand that the commission is not likely to act on comments at this meeting due to requirements of the Open Meetings Law, but may do so at a future meeting. We're not thronged by people at this meeting, so unless anyone has any objections, we'll move beyond that to number 5. Number 5, continue discussion of award categories for the annual Historic Preservation Award Program. Ray or Eloise, do you just want us to take that, or did you want to?
I'll introduce
Okay.
it. So those of you who've been at the last few meetings back in May, we put together some information for you on the award categories and also the national, the Department of Interior guidelines for your discussion. And then the last meeting, we had some additional, and one thing that we put together with that was an attachment of the history of the awards and all the categories that have been awarded and what projects and what categories. And then last meeting, we also included a little bit wider information about some of the other programs around the country and how they're wording their programs and what they include. And so then at conclusion of our discussion last time, I believe that the minutes reflect well the discussion, and the discussion talked about trying to collapse some of the categories to make it simpler. I think having things conveyed clearly is really important because there's a wide swath of people applying. Sometimes they may have applied before. Sometimes they may be totally new to this. And so we want the wording to convey exactly the intent of the award and who may or may not qualify. And so we asked at the end of last time if people would submit their wording, their preferred wording for categories. And Ted did submit, and I appreciate that. And I hope you all had a chance to look at his comments and ideas. I would also just say, you know, our award program we have now that's been in place for 10 years, it's not broken. It really doesn't have to be, thrown out and started over. We've got some good stuff there. But at the same time, I think there's room for improvement. And I think that was clear in the discussion last time. So I'm just going to turn it over to you guys for a discussion. I think that that we should have some good direction from the discussion tonight. And then maybe the next meeting, if we're ready to actually vote on approved language and so forth, we could do that at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Eloise. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the changes that I proposed? I should say again, and I said this last meeting, that when I communicated with you, Eloise, and the group, these are I'm just spitballing. I'm not wed to any of this language. And again, to recognize what you said, I mean, the program doesn't seem to be broken. We're not trying to fix something that's broken. To my mind, I think it would just be have a little more impact with the public if we tweaked a few things here and there. I don't know. Do we just want to open this up to discussion? Anybody have any thoughts about this? About the original language changes that I suggested? Other changes?
Maybe I'll start with a simple question. So I think last time we maybe were talking about 3 award categories, and I think the proposed wording, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 5 or 6. So Ted, can you talk a little bit about what your intention was there, whether we're still talking about rolling them together?
So yeah, I mean, I think, so we have 2 categories of awards, what we originally called structural awards and then special awards. I think as I continue to look at this, look for ways that we could collapse things or expand things, I couldn't really collapse them as much as I had wanted to. And so what I did is I just eliminated, in my draft anyway, one of the 4, what we call structural awards, the adaptive reuse award. And my justification for that was that really adaptive reuse, I mean, it's a very specific thing. It's talking about taking a building that was built for one use and adapting it for another use. In the preservation world, rehabilitation kind of encapsulates adaptive reuse, even if it means oftentimes rehabilitation projects are a house continuing to be a house and not a house being transformed into an office building. It just seemed unnecessarily specific to me and probably confusing to the public. The other changes were all within the existing categories and the existing awards, and they just involve kind of cleanup of language. Cleanup of language, and then also I thought it would be important if we tried to make the titles of the awards a little more impactful, give them a little more curb appeal. And I just threw out there as an example for number 2 under structural awards, Crown Jewel of Ames Award, which I know is a little silly, but and we should probably leave that and come up with something better. But the special awards I think are all good. Again, just some cleanup here and there to make them, again, clear for the public. So. I did think we should change the categories. Special awards can stay special awards. Structural awards, structure means something very specific in the preservation world. So I thought we would just call it building awards, call it what it is. Any other thoughts about this? Or?
Could we say historic resource awards?
I was thinking about that. Would the reason for that be to include bridges and
Possibility of other things,
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but again, in the preservation world, we talk about cultural or historic resources, which includes 5 different kind of broad categories of historic resource. Buildings are the most common. Historic districts are collections of the other types of resources. Archaeological sites, objects, which are works of art, and structures, which are works of engineering that don't house human activity. Historic resources broad, it would allow us to give awards for any of those categories. I guess my only concern is that as a member of the public reading that, will they know what that means? Or is it?
I think so. I mean, that's pretty, I don't think that's too technical a term.
Okay.
Really. I think they hear enough about historic preservation that I think historic resources would, I don't know.
Would it hurt to put the definition next to it? Just after you do the title, just short little paragraph or sentence that it describes what that is?
Yeah, or put buildings,
Okay.
whatever.
I always lean towards the cultural resources myself, to be honest with you. Just
Could you guys speak up a little bit? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry.
And maybe bend the microphones down a little more. That might help.
Thank you.
just lean towards the cultural resources to include a broader range. Sometimes people don't always consider things that would be a nice inclusion, you know.
Just do historic cultural resource / cultural resources. That would be not that
Yeah.
more difficult, I guess, that would cover everything.
Right. So the first category would be historic cultural resource awards, and we'd include examples of potential types of resources.
Right.
Okay.
Did you look at the adaptive reuse awards in the past to kind of see if they would all fit under the rehabilitation then, or was that?
Do you know that, Eloise? In the past, when we've given the adaptive reuse award, would they logically fit under the current language under historic rehabilitation?
I didn't really delve into that to see. I was thinking that it would be good to look at these past awards and see if they would fit under the same category or a different category to make sure we're not excluding something.
Yeah, that's what I don't want.
I didn't
Mhm.
get into that.
I don't want to eliminate it if it's, if it would.
I could
keep
tell you the
something.
ones that received adaptive reuse in the past. We had 232.5 Main Street, 303 Kellogg, the Roosevelt School,
Yeah.
Hala Architecture at 413 Kellogg, the Crawford at 415 Stanton, Cornbread Barbecue at 526 Main Street, and the one at 319 to 321 Main Street, the OEI Ames. That one was this year, so you probably remember that one.
What was the one at 303 Kellogg?
303 Kellogg was Ben Hull. That was back in 2011. I don't know that project exactly.
So my reading of historic rehabilitation now, we just went with the language that we have right now. It doesn't seem to preclude adaptive reuse projects.
Okay.
No.
Could we just put a sentence in there to include adaptive reuse under that category?
Sure.
That just include a sentence that says it includes adaptive reuse
Under
Yeah,
historic,
under that.
yeah, under
Yeah.
rehabilitation.
under rehabilitation.
So what about the rewording that I've proposed of each category? Does that look generally okay with the additions that we just talked about? What about the titles?
Did you change any of them? I didn't. I
Yeah,
didn't
I
noticed that you
bring it
changed the
along,
title.
so I'm.
So I changed
Oh,
historic rehabilitation to
I could get it on.
renewing the past award.
oh.
And I changed restoration, and I'm going off the rails here, I know a little bit, but it seems to be with restoration, we're trying to really highlight projects that are labor intensive, cost intensive, very labor intensive projects, true restoration projects. And so I came up with Crown Jewel of Ames Award. And again, I'm not wed to that title at all, but something along those lines would be, I think, better. And then the third one, what is now historic preservation, would be Keeping the Past Alive Award. The idea being that a property owner is undertaking routine maintenance on a property to keep that historic property in good working order and preventing additional degradation. What do you guys think? Are those? I've seen those used in other cities,
Have you?
and I have mixed feelings about them.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it might mean more to the property owner getting those awards if it sounds a little more important, I think, so.
Well, I don't.
Nobody-
I don't have an opinion on it.
I have a question. So last time there was a lot of talk about historic versus non-historic.
Yeah.
And my comment is just a layperson and not a historic person. Or that's not the right. Maybe I am a historic person. Anyway, someone really familiar with historic preservation. Is that to say non-historic sounds like it's current, it's modern, and not. So, but at the same time, I thought there was some interesting discussion about the validity of having projects that did, remain true to the standards of the Department of Interior and that were applying for tax credits and had to meet those standards. So in your categories, Ted, is one of those that?
Well, that's a good point. I think I raised that issue at the last meeting, and my concern was that we would just be giving awards to properties that are on the National Register locally listed, and I wanted an opportunity for us to recognize work like Crawford School, which I think we have already anyway. But I think the way we get around adding an additional category for non-historic properties is it's already taken care of. I'd missed this before, but in the eligibility requirements, we have that the resources that are nominated must have undergone historic rehabilitation, restoration, or historic preservation, or adaptive reuse, and be at least 50 years old. It doesn't say the historic properties need to be 50 years old. So conceivably, we could have a property like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something more recent, some mid-century building that's not quite 50 years. And we could consider that for an award if the owner did a rehabilitation project on it. And it would weed out properties that are 2 years old, or 10 years old, or 20 years old. That makes sense? I think that
They would have to be 50 years old, or
well, yeah,
I
or around 50 years old. I mean, if we're going with the Park Service criteria, there's always that caveat that a property that's very significant, that isn't quite 50 years old, can be considered eligible for the National Register. But I guess what I was trying to do is eliminate properties that are literally 5 or 10 or 20 years old from even coming to us.
Sure.
This is an historic preservation program.
Right.
So unless you guys disagree, I mean, I think that kind of covers what I was getting at the last meeting. And it gives us some flexibility without opening the floodgates to properties that are new.
Should it be at least 25 years or what? Maybe we should, that's probably not a good idea. I think 50 is okay to cut it off at 50.
I think so too.
Is that based on a standard that's already out there? You said Parks and Rec?
National Register of Historic
Yeah.
Places.
Yeah,
is
I
50
like that the way
years.
that's.
So,
Yeah.
And if there was a special project that came forward, they could certainly check and ask. That would be, I don't think it would preclude
right.
somebody just wanting to bring forth something they felt was significant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you guys could almost handle that administratively if you have somebody who comes to you and says, I've got this property. It was, it's 48 years old. You take a look at it. We take a look at it. It's likely going to be eligible for the National Register or locally eligible. We might consider that even if it hasn't met that threshold.
I think I mentioned last time, and I don't know if I was very clear on what I was trying to get across, but it seems like a good award would be a compatibility award. And because, for one thing, people have a horrible time with compatibility. And I think it would give, say somebody did an infill project on Main Street and it was very compatible, and didn't copy, then I think that would be an award worth considering.
Maybe a special recognition for compatibility?
Well, I think it could be an award.
We do have under special awards, we have it's called right now the Architecturally Compatible New Additions or Structures Award.
Okay.
I thought we should call it Sensitive New Design Award.
Okay.
I mean, the way it's written right now, architecturally compatible, I don't know if that means in addition to a building, or are you talking about architectural compatibility, a building within a district? And so the way I rewrote it was we would call it Sensitive New Design Award, that recognizing new construction that is architecturally compatible with and sympathetic to historic buildings in the vicinity. This includes sensitive new infill within historic districts.
Okay, but it could be a sensitive new addition to a building too, not just to a district.
Yeah.
but to
Right.
other buildings. I think it could include say an addition
Yeah,
into City Hall that was compatible.
So maybe recognizing new, we'd have to wordsmith it later, but recognizing new additions to an existing building.
Districts or
Yeah.
buildings. Yeah.
Well, yeah, recognizing new or sensitive new additions to buildings, existing buildings, or new construction that is architecturally compatible, blah, 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 within the district.
Uh-huh.
Would it be buildings or structure?
I'm sorry.
Building,
Buildings
because structure would
probably.
include bridges and stuff,
Yeah.
so I don't know whether you would want it.
I mean, the reality is we're not going to see a lot of,
Sure. Yeah.
we're going to see a lot of buildings in Ames. We're going to see a lot of districts and a handful of structures and maybe
Okay.
an occasional oddball object or archaeological site. But so did you get that, Eloise? Did that make sense? So for the first special award, the one that's now called architecturally compatible new additions and structures, we're just trying to recognize that you can have an addition to a building that ideally will be architecturally sensitive to the existing building, but also infill construction within the district, recognizing buildings that kind of play along with the existing buildings within that district. So kind of two different scales.
Yeah, I think that wordsmithing is good. I personally, to me, when I read Sensitive New Design Award, to me, that sounds like something totally different than what you're describing here because of the design, and new design sounds like it's brand new.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and it could be new, but so I'm not crazy about the title, but I like the description, how you've tweaked it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm just throwing those out there.
Sure. The word sensitive I like. I just
Yeah.
don't like the new
Yeah.
design part.
So do we?
Yeah, I like the use of the word compatible in that because I just think it's an opportunity to educate people what compatible is.
Mhm.
Right.
So,
Were you talking when you were saying about the category historic/cultural resources? Was that intended to replace historic rehabilitation, or was that replacing the historic landscapes, etc.?
That was replacing historic rehabilitation. So award number 1 under structural awards.
Okay.
We want to mull over the titles a little bit more. Would we be able to return to things like the titles for these awards at the next meeting?
Yeah.
I mean, if we want
Let's
to
do that.
mull it over,
Sure.
try to come up with something that's good.
I'll try to take all the comments and
Okay.
put them into the text.
Any other comments or questions about this?
No, I appreciate you taking a stab at the language
yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
and the titles.
You don't. I don't know that. Okay. Do we have to make a motion to return to this next meeting, or are we okay just proceeding?
I think you can just continue it, but I would ask, is there consensus with the elimination of the adaptive
that's-
reuse and adding it into the first category? Maybe that would be a good vote to have at this point.
Yeah, I think adaptive reuse could be any one of these categories, right? I mean, you could, I don't know why you couldn't do a restoration project, a high-end restoration project that is an adaptive reuse, or an historic preservation project that is an adaptive reuse. I mean, so I think we could fold those into any of the other categories. So we should vote on whether or not we want to eliminate that now.
Well, I think it would be helpful to have that step
Yep.
confirmed.
So do we have a motion to eliminate the existing number 4 from the structural awards, adaptive reuse?
I'll make the motion to
I'll
eliminate
second.
number 4.
I'll second.
First and a second, everyone in favor?
I'm fine. Yeah.
Aye. Okay, we've moved to approve that elimination. And we'll return to this topic in a month's time.
Okay.
Thank you. Number 6 on the agenda, discussion of possibilities for certified local government grants. As I mentioned to you, Eloise and Ray, Mary Jo, Susan, and I met last week, Tuesday of last week, to talk about this. Mary Jo had agreed to give a synopsis of where we are at this point. If you would, please.
Okay, you have the paper in front of you. I'll just go over it if you have any questions at the end. The applicant would be the City of Ames Historic Preservation Commission. The proposal is to apply for a matching grant of $18,000 for an intensive level survey. The in-kind match of $12,000 would be from volunteer hours from HPC, paid time of staff of the planning department, and possible volunteer hours of members of the Ames History Museum. These are things we all discussed, and I don't know that, and this will be in the exact proposal. So the project would be to complete an intensive level survey of approximately 225 residential properties that are identified in the 2009 Historic Preservation Plan. These properties are within potential historic districts included in the Chautauqua Park and the first and second Ridgewood additions. State of Iowa inventory forms would be completed by paid Iowa State students in the history, planning, and or architecture disciplines under the guidance of 2 of the commissioners. Their time would be unpaid. It would be volunteer, who meet the Secretary of Interior's professional qualifications. And then I wrote out a timeline. From now until August 9th would be preparation of the grant application. The August 9th would be review by the commission and approval, and probably a recommendation to City Council. And it would go to City Council on August 24th for approval. The mayor has to sign a letter to supporting the grant application when it goes into the State Preservation Office. And the deadline for the final application is September 3rd. So, and I think grants are usually awarded like the end of October, aren't they?
December.
December?
Yep.
It's a little later.
Okay, so it's for then starts the following year.
Mhm.
Okay. So those are the things we kind of decided would be a good proposal, and I would be writing the grant. I'd have to do investigation on how much, what staff could contribute, and I think Ted and I are pretty clear on what our part would be. And other commissioners, any time that they contribute to the project would count toward the match. So I think with as far as the staff match for that type of project, I think I was thinking probably mapping would be a really good contribution if there's, to do the district maps and to be able to identify contributing and non-contributing buildings within the district and be able to include that with the report. So I don't know right now what the state of Iowa requires with that mapping, but I think that would be a big help if staff
Oh,
could
yeah.
do that part of it.
So the question, the contributing and non-contributing buildings would be, the determination of that would be from the work the students do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so that would just be compiling that data into a map,
Yes.
that format.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if the city has any money for a cash match or not. I don't think we'll need it, but is that something we could look into or?
It would have to be decided by the city council. There's nothing budgeted,
Uh-huh.
so they would have to take it out of another part of the budget to, put into this project. But that would be a decision they'd have to make.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I'm thinking it would maybe be 5,000, maybe at the most.
Did you want to ask some questions?
I know some of these grant applications, they require like a preliminary review by the State Historic Preservation Office. Is this one of them that requires that review?
Yes. Yeah. There's a date for the draft to be submitted.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
see.
what I was thinking.
I think I have it. Maybe I don't have it.
It doesn't have that date. It just says,
Oh, yeah, there is a date somewhere. I don't have it with me. Wait here. August 13th is a draft application.
August 13th?
Mm-hmm.
And that's by SHPO.
By SHPO, yeah. We don't need to have city council approval for that. It just needs to go in with the final application, I think.
I think so.
so if we did not get the possible 5,000 that we would need from city council, would this stop it in its tracks, or is this something that,
No, I think there'll be plenty of in-kind match because it's 12,000. And the idea is to get some young people interested in
Yeah.
doing the work, and it'll give them an opportunity to learn about it. And the intensive level surveys are kind of the basis of the whole thing, what a city does or state for historic preservation.
Yeah.
So it's a good learning experience, and I think that I'm not sure how much per hour the OHP would recommend that like Ted and I could
work?
work, because we meet the qualifications for the for historic preservation professionals. So I feel like we probably almost have enough for the match
Yeah.
with that, but I don't know for sure. So I think if we could get like $5,000, that it would give us some maybe an opportunity to produce some kind of a brochure about the survey.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm thinking of the possibilities of getting public education into this as well. So
When we talked about this, the three of us,
Mm-hmm.
it's important that we not only do the survey as a starting point. It's important that we follow on the heels of the survey with promotional materials so that the folks that live in these three neighborhoods, which are residential, right? These are all residential neighborhoods. They would be eligible for the state tax credit. And so there should be ideally an educational component at the end of this to really, advocate on behalf of state tax credits and show folks out there what they can do. And I know you've had personal experiences, good and bad, with that. But so this is really, I know you guys know this, Ray and Eloise, but this is really the first thing you do when you're doing preservation is you assess what's out there. You do a survey, and that lays the groundwork for everything that follows. And how do we come to that? How do we choose these 3 projects? I can't remember exactly what the discussion entailed.
Well, from the survey areas in that 2009 report, it just looked like an area that just needed to be done. It just stood out because of it's different than Old Town. The houses are later, the landscaping and everything, and it being situated along Brookside Park. So I think that was kind of the reason. Plus, I was thinking of 100 buildings, but I think we could do I think we could do 200 with where Ted had suggested we not pay the the students that much, so per hour. So.
I think
It's on record now.
Yes.
I think you said that.
Well, I think there are rules as to how much I think
Right.
we can pay students,
Okay.
and so yeah. But I think the thinking was, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we wanted now that the downtown is done, it's a National Register district. Most of the other work done by Will Page back in the 2010s. A lot of those neighborhoods have changed. It's like Campus Town would have been a logical one, but I think we talked about this last time. There's very little there now that would probably constitute a district.
Mhm.
I think 3 contiguous residential districts, again, of a different era would be a good kind of new direction to
They
take.
still have a lot of
Preservation.
integrity
And they have a lot of integrity,
Mhm.
right?
that would come across. I mean, and it's a very desirable neighborhoods,
From the city's perspective, would you agree that these are good choices, or?
Well, I mean, it's an area of the city that has a unique character, certainly, and those structures are, certainly 50 years old or older. I mean, I think surveying it, there's justification you can make for surveying it. Now, I see you want to do an intensive level survey. Was there any thought about doing a reconnaissance level survey first, or did you want to do every property?
My preference would be, that's what was recommended in that plan. And I think
An intensive level?
Yeah.
it'd be best to do that. That way, if the neighborhood was interested in a designation, you'd have the information about all of the buildings. And so,
Will Page was thorough, and you could almost argue that what he did was a recon survey.
I would say, yeah.
I don't know if he didn't produce the inventory cards, but I think a recon survey at this point would almost be too low hanging.
mhm.
Oh, okay,
I think we've done or the city has done the legwork. It makes sense to go to the intensive.
Is
level.
it a year that you have to complete the CLG grant?
I don't know.
I think it is. It could
I don't
be.
think it's quite a year. I think it's maybe 10 months or something.
Yeah, or maybe it's within the fiscal year. We'd have to look into that. I'm not sure. Are you concerned that we couldn't do an intensive survey in that amount of time?
Well, the students would have to be pretty committed to, doing the site sheets, site inventory sheets. It's,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good
Definitely.
number of properties. It's larger, well, in comparison, it's larger than the Old Town Historic District.
Mhm.
The Old Town Historic District has 150 some properties, and this would be more than that. What do you think, Ted? Are there students that would be committed enough to get all those done in the time required, or?
Right. I think the problem is always, problem with students is that we're on that 17-week semester. We're talking 2 semesters. But if you're paying them, we're not talking about tying this to a class. I think the bar is a lot lower when we tie a project like this to the class because there's only so much we can expect of them. But if they're being paid to do this and they know they have 10 months or a year to do it, it depends on who we see in the door. But there are, it goes without saying that there are no shortage of eager, bright students that could easily take this on with, our supervision is a commission. Whether they'll be there in 4 months' time, I can't say that, but I'm optimistic that we could find several.
So does the state have to approve who does the site sheets?
Well, I'm assuming they wouldn't approve the grant application if they didn't like
Yeah,
the like the methodology. So
I'm just thinking back to past grants. It seems like they had to approve the consultant you hire too.
if you hire a consultant,
That the consultant, he or she would need to be, meet their qualifications.
right?
We both do.
Yeah,
clearly.
yeah, and you both would be involved. Yeah,
I think actually the 3 of
yeah,
us.
and Susan. Yeah.
Could this be considered an internship?
Yeah, I'm not, there's internships are treated very specifically
Yep.
too. So I don't know if we would want to treat it as an internship. I'd have to look into that. It's going to vary by department too.
Sure.
I think there are different rules for architecture, for example, versus planning or history. This is going to require a little bit more, figuring out, I think, in the short term. But you're concerned about the size. Now that I think about it, that could be an issue. How many properties are in Old Town?
150 some.
So this is significantly bigger.
But I think once we look at the quality, I mean, if we really sat down with Will's survey, I think we could probably cut it into different kinds of priorities. And I think that might make it a little easier to approach. I think we'd have to do it anyway in structuring how we were going to do all that kind of.
Yeah.
I think it'd be doable.
I don't think it's a problem. If need be, I'd finish them.
Right. I mean, the burden would be on the supervising folks
Yeah.
Right.
to finish what the students can't. But I guess my only other concern would be if COVID rears its head again, and suddenly students can't go to the county assessor's office to do the the title research and the chain of ownership and whatnot, and that's a critical component of an intensive survey. So, but I think we just have to move forward with the expectation that they will have access to that information. I don't think most of it is online still. It's still hard.
And then would you see the next step after this was done as being like a National Register nomination?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, possibly,
Depends on
depending
how
what
it
you find.
shapes up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it would be eligible, but I think it would, I don't know, it depends on the neighborhood, I think, if they support it or not. They don't have to, but you do have to have public meetings if you're going to do a National Register nomination of a district. So but that would be an end goal.
Mhm. Yeah, after this.
Mhm.
I think during the draft review process too, we would obviously want to meet with SHPO, have them, reevaluate Will Page's 2009 recommendations. I don't think the district has changed significantly since that time, but we don't want to go off on some, fool's errand that doesn't, produce what we're trying to produce here. So, but I think, again, just based on what we've seen collectively, it looks like it probably still would be worth surveying. I don't think they would tell us otherwise. But that's something we can kind of nip in the bud at that early draft stage. So, or even a conversation before that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. And I'm not real familiar with this whole process. So my question is there much subjectivity involved with the analysis of the data and the development of the forms? My background in doing surveys, and it wasn't architectural, it was tree inventory, but, and it was rather subjective, really. When you start getting too many other people involved, you get different opinions. So if you're scoring something, one person, it's like a regular survey at the end of a lecture. One person may be very optimistic and one may be very pessimistic. So how would that work? Or is that even a factor?
It's that.
Well, I think objectivity is pretty much assured if you'd have to have the right training for the people that are doing the evaluation, because when you're doing an inventory form, you're doing an evaluation. So you're looking at integrity when you do the survey. So it's pretty objective, unlike a tree.
It's either there or it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a process of negotiation. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think or you guys think. It matters what the SHPO and ultimately what the Park Service thinks. We're using their criteria for eligibility in the National Register, and that informs the survey process too. It's as objective as it can be. I tell my students that there's no historic preservation meter that you can go out into a neighborhood like with a Geiger counter and detect the presence of radiation. You can't go out and detect the presence of history. There are all these, guidelines and white papers and rules in place to help us make those determinations. But at the end of the day, there's a little subjectivity involved. But again, negotiation with SHPO, we arrive at an end that's as objective as we can make it.
I think there's certain data points that are just have to be in place as we go. And maybe there may be some descriptive changes that one person may say one way or another, but there are certain data points that just are irrefutable. So,
and this is precisely why this is a perfect project for university students. Planners, if they're in your shoes down the road, they're going to have to advise people like us in whatever community they're working in. Architects, they're going to be sent to a neighborhood, to look at it and determine whether or not a property is eligible for the National Register, whether it's going to be eligible for tax credits. They need to know that determination process too. Historians as well. So, this is, for the reasons that you bring up, Eloise, this is perfect for students. And seeing that process of negotiation is, I think, more valuable probably than anything, or as valuable as the materials that we get out of this process.
Would you inventory the garages?
We would do all outbuildings.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it would be, the inventory form would be for the property. So if there was a garage that was contributing, it would be on the form as well.
Sure.
How do you determine how much time it's going to take? And I assume that's part of the application, that you have to spell out the man hours and the process and the time involved.
Right. Yeah. Not detailed, but yes, just experience doing the form, and I don't know what's available as far as primary source documents. You're familiar with that. That's depends on the student doing that research, and but the form itself can be completed pretty quickly. You've got to have the photographs. There's that phase, and then there's doing the research on the property for the like at the county records, and then writing the description is probably the most lengthy part of it. But that I think you can teach a student to do it in a certain way that it's very efficient. And so I think it's, I think it's doable. I'd have to give it more thought on exactly how much time one form would take. Because you're spending a block of hours researching all the properties. So then when you come back, it's just a matter of putting it on the form. So determining exactly how many hours per form is a little difficult, but I probably need to include that in.
Would you limit the number of students that you work with, or thought on that?
I'm not sure. I thought 2 could do it. It'd probably be good if you could do 3.
I think if we had a mix, too many cooks in the kitchen would be a problem. I think. Ideally, I think we'd maybe have one history student, one planning student, one architecture student. The architecture student could do the building descriptions. The history student could do the research,
Yeah.
and maybe the planning student, if the city doesn't have time to give, creating GIS data for this, planning student could do that. But it really determines on who we get and what their background is. But I think a mix of, 3 students would be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
3 students of different majors, different backgrounds would be ideal.
So with the students being paid, would that be a cash match then, that portion?
Well, they'd be paid with grant money.
Oh, okay. Be paid with grant money, okay.
Yeah.
I know the way it works is the state would reimburse, at the end.
Mm.
So the money that would be paid to the students would have to come from somewhere before that.
Right, from the
Yep.
city. From the city, it would have to come from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Yep.
that has to be approved by, I know.
So that's what the $5,000 would be used for?
Well, no, I was thinking that in addition to, but no, well, the city would have to pay. Well, let's see. I'd have to look into how they do that. How
Okay.
you do that. I suppose it's possible to pay the students at the end of the project when the city receives the money, when the project's submitted. I don't know. That's probably going to be a little hard to get students to work for that much without getting paid for the products.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah.
I don't know if we hire students as students, or do we just hire them as, contractors? I don't know if there are. We'd have to figure that out. I'm not sure how that would work. This would not be an internship. This would not be,
Right.
tied to a class in any way.
Mhm.
So I don't know how that works with us hiring. We could advertise it to anybody and then hire students, or we could target students specifically. I don't. Has the city done that in the past in any capacity? Have they?
Not that I'm aware of. Not paying students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
The
it,
closest thing I can think of is the downtown National Register nomination.
that was through the chamber, though, right? That was through the chamber of commerce.
Yeah, it wasn't through the city.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So we'll have to
Yeah.
look into that more. But are we in any danger of seeing any of the deadlines elapse if we wait another month to research some of these ideas?
think so.
I need to start writing the
Okay.
grant.
Right. August 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, so there's nothing from the city's perspective that would prevent us from using this grant to hire students? Or is that,
I'm not aware of anything, but
what I'll do is I'll reach out to the university and to my college and find out if there are any issues with
yeah.
either hiring students through the university, through College of Design has a research office called IDRO. That's I can never remember the name of it, the acronym stands for, but it's a conduit between students and faculty and members of the non-academic community. That's how we work on projects with them. I don't know if we need to go that route or if we can just simply hire those students.
We'd probably need to do some more checking.
I think we'd have to check with our purchasing department
Yeah.
and see what our protocol is for advertising work.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything
Yeah. Is there?
like this that
Yeah.
we've done.
Yeah, we-
or
Yeah, like you say,
And-
we'd need to check with
I'll
purchasing.
just throw this out, but when we were talking about it internally, there was some concern about the size of the project.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that we haven't done one of these for a very long time. So it's not like it's familiar. Now, you guys seem like you're very familiar and very, you have all the experience, but it seems like that in getting this taken care of, it's kind of new territory in many ways. So would that, like even the training and so forth, that's not something we have already prepared.
Yeah.
Like we didn't just do it last year where we can repeat the same thing.
Right.
So that might be a factor in accomplishing it if it is large. And then as we kind of mentioned before, what the role of staff would be and and also the cost, because it's not in the budget. So that, especially this first go around, might be more of a factor than if it was a follow-up project and you had a track record of success, maybe.
Right.
I don't know.
No,
That's
that's
just some of what we talked about.
right. That makes sense. And I think scaling it back and doing a phased, maybe doing the first phase this year and doing half the number of buildings, that would work fine,
Yeah.
I think too. So,
CLG is it's federal pass-through money through the SHPO, is it not?
yes.
So I'm almost 100% certain that pass-through money can be used to hire students. I'm digging into the depths of the old brain, and I think back in Michigan we did use CLG money to hire university students to do projects, but we can look into that. So we'll, if it's okay, we'll continue to meet, not as a quorum, but three of us, to discuss this in the next month, if that's okay. And we'll feed you information as we
Okay. Yeah.
we develop it.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do we have anything else we want to talk about?
That's all.
Thank you for putting that together, Mary Jo.
Yeah.
Exciting.
What's that?
It's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's important, and I like to think about how it'll benefit students. I mean, to have this on their portfolio, on their CV, it'll open doors for them. So,
Benefit the homeowners in those particular.
Well, right,
tax credit too.
right. I think the other point we need to make is that familiar refrain about National Register being honorific, no new regulatory burdens on property owners, and the availability of that carrot, that financial incentive through the state tax credit program. And that's how we make that a justification. Number 7, discussion of offering of. Did I skip something? Oh, discussion of offering of educational session for downtown property and business owners. This is something that Angie and I, we met via Zoom last week, to talk about it. Did you want to give a summary, or should I?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it was a really good conversation. And in general, I think it really focused in on a short session, really geared towards gaining interest in the program. And then if there's other sessions maybe geared towards, this is how you do it, this is the tax incentives and more of the detailed architectural and financial things, that can certainly come later. But that very first thing is just getting the word out there as a, almost, I don't want to say advertisement, but making sure people are aware of the program and the benefits. And in that way, I felt like a manageable session.
Mhm.
You know, I think we talked about maybe a 1 hour session on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, something to that effect.
Yeah, yeah. So what we talked about is, so are you familiar with?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm up to date, so to speak, I think.
So again, this is to try to promote the new National Register District downtown, and specifically the federal rehabilitation tax credit. I can't remember how many contributing projects there are in the downtown district, but they're, I think, about 2/3 of the property or 3/4 of the properties are contributing and nominally eligible for the tax credit. And so I think we've only had 2 properties use the tax credit. Vec Design, and if I'm not mistaken, the Sheldon Munn. Am I right about that? I think they did as well. But anyway, very few, and a lot more property owners could make use of the credit. So as Angie mentioned, we were thinking perhaps in September. I think we had tossed out September 8th as a possible date, a work week evening after the stores have closed. So any day but Thursday, whatever day they're open late. We would bring in an expert on the tax credit to walk through the property and talk about the potential of that property using the tax credit, some of the challenges that that person has seen in their time working in the field. As I had mentioned at the last meeting, I reached out to Steve Wilkie Shapiro. You guys will remember him. He came and gave a presentation here a couple of years ago on the tax credit. I suggested that he, perhaps come back and do what we just talked about, do a walkthrough of a building. He thought that was a great idea. Again, Steve is a local kid. He was born and raised here. I work with him on a number of different committees and commissions, so I know him very well. He does excellent work, and he'd be willing to come back and do something that we're talking about, something akin to what we're talking about again. He also added that maybe in addition to a walkthrough, at the end we do a Q&A, and then maybe do a sign-up sheet where people who are interested in the tax credit could leave us their names and contact information, and we could get in touch with them if they want additional consultation, something along those lines. I think the question then becomes what building? And I don't know, I didn't give this any more thought. I don't think we talked about this, but how would you guys recommend we proceed with that? Ray and Eloise, how would we want to reach out to an owner in the downtown to host that walkthrough? I mean, are there any buildings
Looking for somebody that got the tax credits?
No, we want
You're
somebody
looking
who.
for somebody who has not gotten
Exactly.
them.
And it's easier to
highlight.
find those, right? Because there are only 2 people, I think, in the downtown that have used it. So it'd have to be a property that is income producing. So again, not hard to find in the downtown. Property that hasn't used the tax credit already, and that's a contributing resource in the district. And somebody who would be interested in hearing about this. I think, ideally, we would find a property that has retail on the bottom floor, maybe office or residential above. We could talk about the whole building. And in fact, if we talk about the
We could probably get you some ideas and get back to you on that.
Is
I
the,
don't have anything in my head.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I don't have a specific
Yes.
property in mind.
it's Ames Tribune's not in the district.
I don't think it is.
Mhm.
No, that was in the civic. The Ames Tribune is not in the downtown district, if I'm not mistaken. I know
So, right.
because Will Page had identified a separate downtown civic center district that I think included that, if I'm not mistaken. But,
Yeah, I'd have to look at the map and see.
yeah.
Yeah.
We were thinking September too. The focus of this, I think, we would obviously need to promote it. We could promote it through the chamber, through the Main Street program, but we would want to focus on business owners because it is the retail district. we'd also talked about having this in September while the weather is still acceptable. We'd also be able to maybe draw a few ISU students too at that time. I think we start on August 23rd, so they'd be back in the swing of things by then.
So you probably need the name of a location really quick. So if we get you some ideas, like in the next, this week,
Yeah.
we send them to just Ted and Angie for your discussion.
Yeah, and Susan was
And
working on this
Susan.
with us as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I think unless there's reason for us not to do this, we could maybe reach out to some people in the district too. I'm forgetting who was the property owner that owned a store in the district. She was on the commission until
Lisa?
Lisa. Would she be a
Yeah.
possible?
Lisa Hovis?
Yeah.
She was very
So-
active, yeah.
Yeah. So, if, unless you guys prefer to do this, maybe, would we want to do it individually, reach out to people or?
You certainly
that.
could. Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
helpful to have at least an idea of who's approachable
Mhm.
to start with.
I think with Lisa, truly, it gets down to funding, I think, as to who has, I think there's certain entities who move forward with projects because they have funding in place and they know the process and so forth. And one time I visited with her just briefly and she's pretty busy with her work. And as is the case with, small business owners. So I think she's very interested.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, I don't know what you're looking for exactly for somebody. But I think if you find somebody you want to go forward with, that's fine. You don't need our recommendation because
Yeah.
I'm not sure we would recommend what you're looking for.
Yeah. I propose we reach
Touch
out to
base.
them. Well, we would maybe specifically reach out to the Main Street program. That's what Main Street's all about is rehabilitation and economic development. Do you have a contact there? It's not Cindy Hicks, is it?
We can
She's-
send you a contact.
Okay.
And then too, Lisa may have ideas,
Okay.
certainly because she's familiar,
Yeah.
and maybe she would be wanting to host.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it might be really good to reach out to her.
Yeah. It will, as you say, Eloise, it would be good to find somebody who doesn't have a slam dunk property. We want somebody who has a problematic property. So Steve could walk through it and talk about the challenges
Yeah.
and opportunities. But somebody who's also thinking about moving to the next stage and actually
Right,
pursuing tax
right.
credits would be
We'd
ideal.
like to see something happen as a result.
Right. So again, if it's okay with the city, we'll set up a meeting with the aim, based on the contact you give us, with the Main Street program here. And then we'll use that as kind of a jumping off point.
Okay.
Just to start, yeah.
Did I cover everything?
Oh.
Okay. Are you good with that, you guys, or can we move on to the next agenda item? Okay.
Yep.
Number 8, commission comments.
No,
Okay.
pretty busy.
Yeah.
Number 9, staff comments.
I don't have anything particular. Eloise, do you have anything?
No?
Okay. We didn't get in under an hour, but we were close. So, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting today?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This concludes the meeting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.